Sorry about that. So replay will be available without all this intro that I just gave. Okay, so this is what we're going to do today. A quick recap. You're aware, but here it goes again. We're going to look into 9 most common communication mistakes that happen at work. Either you do them or your colleagues might be doing them, your boss, with customers. We're going to uncover it all. There is a surprise one that I prepared for you as well, which we are going to look into. That's going to be the last one that I'm going to talk about, but that's going to be basically the one that is the foundation for everything, right? So that is the last one on the slides, but the first one we always want to be thinking about. Then we're going to look into why they happen. Okay, so in order for us to improve, in order for us to change a certain behavior, it's not enough to know only what we do, but why do we do that, right? Like what is driving that behavior of ours? And we're going to deep dive into that as well. And again, I encourage you to write down, think about what might be for you, use the chat. That's why we have it, okay? All right, the next one we're going to look into is going to be impact. The impact those mistakes, under quotation marks, I don't really like that word, have on you and others, right? How can that be, impacting others around you and yourself, and maybe even preventing you from progressing in your career? We are going to uncover that as well. And then you will know how. I'm going to share practical examples as to how you can solve for each of these. Okay. Then we're going to talk about the award. For all of you who are joining here live, who will be staying until the end, you're also going to get an opportunity to win an award, which is very valuable. So stay with me. And then at the end, we're going to talk about any questions, questions you might have, and I will provide answers and support in real time. Just quickly, if there is anyone here, I know actually there are a few people here who might not be super familiar with my work. So just quickly who I am. I'm a certified career coach. I have been running my coaching practice for almost 5 years. It's going to be 5 years now in March. So birthday is coming up. But overall, I've been in the career development sector for over 10 years. I used to work in education industry, and then I moved into recruitment. Now in my coaching business, I offer one-on-one coaching for my clients, and I also offer a corporate coaching. I have a few corporate clients where I'm helping their employees to improve their productivity, improve their performance, overall satisfaction at work. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. And so if you would like to know a bit more about working with me, you can go onto my website, which is approachyourcoach.com. I will also give you just a quick overview at the end of the meeting today as well. If you'd like to book a consult call with me, we can always agree upon that as well. All right, are you ready? Let's go. So this is where you might be right now in terms of your communication skills, or this is where you might be thinking that you are right now, right? So these are some of the most common thoughts that I hear either my clients telling me, either in general, overall individuals around, being like, I'm not a good communicator, kind of thinking, oh, I'm not good in this. Or thinking that I'm not sure what to say. I don't know what to say in certain situations. Or it just feels awkward. We feel that I hear this one, it feels awkward, especially when it comes to networking, right? Because networking sounds like such a scary, horrible thing to do. Does this by the way, let me know in the chat, what maybe thoughts do you have about your communication skills at the moment? Feel free to put it in the chat. Where you also might be right now is you might be overthinking it. What to say, when to say it, how to say it, to whom, to why, right? But what if this happens? Or what if that happens? What if they misunderstand me? Sophia says, yes, it resonates, especially when I feel I'm selling myself. Yes, that's a huge one. That's such a great point. Yes, selling yourself, it feels icky, it feels bad, right? So where you also might be at the moment is you feel misunderstood, or you feel frustrated because others maybe don't know what you mean, or anxious even when it comes to now, oh, I need to present something, I need to communicate, I need to lead the conversation, right? Or you might also feel like you're not even taken seriously by your colleagues. Josie is saying overthinking and not sure how to choose what to say. Yes, or not being heard. Yes, absolutely, right? We're going to talk about them all today. And this is where I want to help you to move to. I want to help you to move to feeling confident about communicating, feeling competent about it as well, right? Feeling at ease. I forgot to mention here also feeling like it's a fun thing to do. I love to talk. I love to communicate. I have so much fun with it, right? And I'm going to help you get there too. I want you to move into or to feeling heard and understood, right? And all of these, as soon as we start working on our communication skills, which is probably like if there is one skill that you want to work on in your career, and I think in general in life, that would be communication, right? Because that is really what is kind of the bridge between you and the outside world, right? So more you work on it, stronger relationships you are going to be creating, more opportunities you're going to be creating for yourself as well. And overall, you will see quicker advancement. So this is like the overview. Now let's deep dive. Sophia, just 1 second, says, feeling less, wait, where did you go? Feeling less restricted in my body and more expansive about it would be a good thing. Yes, I love that. That's such an amazing one. Absolutely. And all the feelings, right? Whatever we feel in our body comes from our way of thinking, right? So if I'm thinking, oh my God, what should I say? I'm not going to be like, woohoo, in my body. I'm not going to feel like an amazingly great emotion, will I? Cosmin says, I sometimes feel that people in front of me should already know what I want to say. Yes, that's actually one of the things we're going to talk about right away. Yes, so good. So good. Okay, so let's move on to the number one. I removed mistake and I put to improve. It just sounds and feels better, doesn't it? So the first one, like, actually, I didn't put them in the level of importance, right? But this is definitely one huge one. And that is you're not listening enough, or you're talking way much more than you listen. Now, let me give you an example. I'm always going to try giving you examples, but also if you have examples, please put them in the chat. So I see, for example, this one very often with my clients who are in sales. And I was guilty of that one before in my previous jobs as well, right? So kind of they would call a client and then they would go into just talking, not creating space for that other person to talk, right? Or you might see, for example, this one in a meeting. Let's say you have a meeting with your manager, or you are a manager, then you invite your employee to the meeting to give them feedback, and you are the one who is predominantly talking, right? So you are talking. You're not creating time or space for them to actually share their thoughts. So why might you be doing that, right? Like sometimes we just make it too much about ourselves. We feel like we need to share it all. Feel like we need to say everything in that moment to that person who is in front of us, right? We think that speaking more will make us come across as more secure or more expert-like. We sometimes think that talking more means more value, which is actually going to be also another point that I'm going to tell you about today. We're not being patient enough. Where you can see this is, for example, you're having a conversation with someone, then you pause for a second, then that person doesn't answer, then you're not being patient, or it feels awkward to just keep talking. Does it resonate? Does it sound familiar? I think we're all guilty of that a bit. Or you might be too competitive. We can see that, for example, one where I see that often is in team meetings. When you have those colleagues who just don't allow others to have their moment of talking, right? They feel like they need to be the one to kind of show their dominance or to be in charge, right? Taking the lead immediately. Now, if we think about how does it impact person or people you're talking to, they will feel unheard, right? They will also feel like you don't care about them. Because if I talk only about me in a conversation, you will probably not think that I care at all about what you have to say, right? You're risking them losing focus. So if I'm talking, the other person will probably drift away with their thoughts, right? And also what might happen is they might become unwilling to collaborate with you, right? They might just be like, oh, they really need to work with that person again. Sophia says, especially because my mind works faster than a lot of people and many convos are scripted, so I jump ahead and that's not good. Yes. I think we all do that, Sophia. I think we really all do, yeah. Just kind of, okay, come to the point, get to the point. Or we tend to sometimes finish people's sentences. I'm trying to stop myself of doing that all the time. How does this might impact you? Poor decision making, Meaning, if you are the one who is continuously talking, you won't have enough information. Let me give you a funny story about that. So when I used to work in recruitment in Switzerland, I used to work for an international recruitment agency, and I was, so much emphasizing, I called the client and I was so much emphasizing on the fact that we're international, we're global, we are everywhere, we have offices all around the world and blah, blah, blah. I didn't allow them to talk, right? And the client interrupted me and they were like, listen, we don't care about that. We are a Swiss company. We just care about national clients or candidates or whatever. And I was like, oops, right? So I wasn't relevant enough to them. Had I just shut up and let them talk for a second, I would have found out this information, right? And the conversation would have gone totally different way. Conversation might not feel deep to you enough, right? If you're the one talking, then at the end of the chat, you might be, well, actually, this wasn't really, deep, or I didn't receive enough information because maybe the other person just didn't feel comfortable to share. You're risking not learning. Right? Of course, if we're the one talking, then obviously we're not learning much new, right? Much new things. You're risking not being relevant, what I just mentioned with my client in Switzerland, right? And also little or no collaboration at all. So what to do? What do we want to do instead? Yes, we need to use active listening more. Exactly, Cosmin. So slowing down and creating space for others to speak, right? Getting genuinely curious about the person or people who are in front of you. One of the things that I really like to keep in mind is just like that everyone has their unique story. Everyone has something to share. We just all gain so much from conversing, talking to each other, right? Stefan says, being introverted and naturally shy, I'm usually at the receiving end of all this. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But I mean, it doesn't have to, you know what, like whatever we are talking about today, like no matter how you, I just want you to always go from a point is like, does this feel good to me? Right? We can always tweak it and adjust it to your unique way, right? It doesn't need it doesn't need to mean that you have to become something that you're not, right? But just to see, like when we, so for example, say, asking open-ended questions, right? And making a pause. Maybe that could be one of the things to consider in terms of opening the conversation and allowing yourself to maybe work kind of over this being shy point of things, Stephanie, if this makes sense, right? We can talk about that later again in Q&A if you'd like, if this makes sense. Yeah. So when I just mentioned open-ended questions, meaning what, like open-ended questions are questions that start with, for example, what, how, why, tell me more, please explain, right? In a conversation, we usually want to try to avoid using questions that start with do you, because then the person can just answer yes or no, or were you, again, yes or no, right? So we open the conversation like that, especially if on the other side, we have a person that maybe might not be that comfortable in sharing, right? So we can allow them, we can create this comfortable space for that from a loving and kind point of view, right? And also you might want to ask for feedback. Ask for feedback. You can ask maybe somebody that you trust. You can even ask your partner or a friend or a colleague or your boss, hey, how do I come across in communication? What do you think could I improve? What could be some areas for me to improve? Cosmin, stop being afraid of having a silent moment in the conversation. Yes, that is so, so, so amazing, right? Like one of the things that I found to be so incredibly powerful is this silence, moment of silence. So for example, when you can use that is in practical terms would be, let's say you're having a conversation with your boss or with your colleague and they finished talking, they kind of completed their sentence, pause for a second and count 1, 2, 3 in your head. Listen, I know this is super awkward. It is, all right? But because it's awkward, people tend to actually keep talking. And very, very often, because you allowed for that space, what they are going to share, it's going to be so super beneficial as well, right? Try it. Really try it as an experiment. It's going to be awkward, but then more you do it, it just doesn't become awkward anymore, really. Sophia is saying, what does it look like to you? It's a great question. Like, what does success look to you exactly, right? Absolutely. Nobody can tell you this. You always need to check in with yourself and see how does this apply. And that's why, for example, when I'm working with my clients, no coaching is the same because none of my clients is the same. So what works for one person might not work for the other. So you always want to be exploring and seeing what works for you. Okay. Number 2, assuming. This is a big one, right? We are assuming that people think the way we think, or we are assuming that they know what they need to do, right? Or we are assuming that the person will tell you no, or that the person will tell you yes, right? Or you're assuming that something might not work out. Overall assuming, right? For example, you might be assuming that your expectations are the same as other people's expectations, or you might be assuming that your boss has certain expectations of you, even though you don't know, you've never even talked about that with them, right? So overall assuming. Now, why do we do that? Either because we have different biases, which happens to all of us, right? Or we are projecting our own thoughts and beliefs, right? So we think that if I'm thinking this way, oh, they must be thinking that way too, right? We also assume because it's often easier and faster, right? It's kind of easier for me to think, oh yeah, it's definitely that way, or I'm assuming it's that way, rather than needing to go there, having to ask, or needing to explain again, right? One of the favorite quotes of one of my ex-managers was never assume. And I'm really using that so much everywhere in my life, really. Never assume. How does it impact others? Not being on the same page, you're assuming one thing, the reality is the other, so there is a disconnect. Them not being able to step in because they don't know what you're thinking, right? So you might be assuming one thing, but then you don't voice it to them, so they cannot help, they cannot support because they don't even know what you're thinking. Unfortunately, we cannot read each other's minds, or fortunately, however we want to see, right? And then not being productive because maybe you are assuming that they're doing whatever you think they should be doing, but then they're doing something else, which maybe is something they shouldn't be doing, right? So again, no productivity. They're not being effective. You're not being on the same page. How does it impact you on the other hand? You might be wasting your time, your energy, your money, right? Again, poor decision making. You might be working towards totally something different. And also misunderstand, like you might be misunderstanding or they might be misunderstanding, overall not being on the same page, really. Assuming sometimes is a subconscious thing because we look at situations or people through our lens or perceptions and past experiences. Absolutely, Jennifer. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Each of us has our own reality. So we really want to notice when we are assuming, and this is actually what also Stefan wrote before. It always starts with awareness. You have to know that you're guilty, under quotation marks, of doing these things. Exactly. It always comes from there. And that's why I mentioned at the very beginning, we're not here to judge ourselves or shame or criticize. We are becoming aware. That's always the first step, which is usually also the hardest one. So what do we want to do? When you kind of notice that you're saying something like, oh, this is like this, right? You're assuming that something is whatever the topic. Pause for a second and ask yourself, is this really true? Right? Is this a fact? Or am I being in my mind drama and spinning in those stories? And then, as simple as this sounds, but it's literally the solution, ask. Reconfirm with that person to be sure before moving on. And there's so many different ways you can do this. You can be like, hey, can you just quickly remind me, or can you just quickly recap what we agreed upon, just so that I can make sure we're on the same page? It can literally be as simple as that. Right? But what you don't want to be doing, you're kind of moving on without really being sure, because imagine how much time you will be wasting potentially. Right? Or you might be saying even like, hey, did I understand it correctly? And then you repeat, you can say what you're assuming, and then allow this person to tell you, oh yeah, that's true, or oh no, that's not what we agreed. Okay? Overwhelming people with too much information. Okay, Sophia just quickly says, sometimes you're scared of the answer because it's not what you want it to be. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We are sometimes scared, but I also think it's probably better, even if it's not what we want to hear, it's probably better to know it, right? At least in most instances. Yeah. So the next one, overwhelming with too much information. Why we do that? This is similar to the first one, talking too much, right? Thinking that more information at once means more value, or that you're going to come across as more knowledgeable, or you might be thinking that they need to know this right now, otherwise they're going to miss out. It's the end of the world. We see that often. I see that often with my clients when they are, for example, preparing for giving their part of a team meeting or presenting a certain topic, right? So they often feel like they have to put so much information in there, and then I stop them. We're going to talk about it in a second, what to do instead. So how does it impact? Yes, Cosmin says, sell what your manager or client needs, not everything you have. Yes, yes. And this is what we're going to talk about in how. Exactly. Love that. Thank you for sharing. Wait. We have more. I just want to read them because they're so good. I love what you're sharing here. So Stefan says, if you're the most clever person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Yes, absolutely. That's so good. Miriana says, it's very important to give yourself time to get to know the other person, feelings, opinions, rather than listening to the third party who might misinterpret. Yes, it means interpret the person you're collaborating with. Yes, you know how many, that's such a great point, Miriana. Oftentimes it happens so that, for example, you're in an office, and I can tell you like a concrete example. So I was about to call one client when I used to work in recruitment, and I remember my colleague telling me, "Oh, they're so difficult. They will not even want to talk with you. They're just so hard, you know, to break through or whatever." And my experience was totally different. I was like, I thank you for your opinion. I'm going to call them anyway, right? Don't allow someone, I love to say this word and this sentence, and that is, don't allow someone else's limitations or opinions to become your own, especially if they don't serve you, right? So again, overwhelming with too much information. What happens when we overwhelm people with too much information? They get confused. And when people are confused, they step back, they get afraid. They're like, what should I even do with all this information? They're not able to follow. They feel like they're being convinced, right? Especially in sales calls. Have you ever had that somebody called you and they were like, let me tell you all about how great the product service is, and you're like, wait, what is happening? Right? They might feel anxious and stressed when there is so much thrown at them. Yes, Jennifer, also because each one's equation with another could be different. Absolutely. Overwhelming with too much information. What happens for you then? You also start feeling stressed because you have, like, you want to say so much in so little time that you just overwhelm yourself with all that information and all that expectation really that you set for yourself. So you rush maybe through the meeting because you have X amount of time. You then skip something, or you first worry that you're going to skip something, then you actually skip something, then you're even more stressed, then, you know, it happens what happens. Mess happens, usually. So we really want to be mindful when we think about that. Like I could, for example, for today, have prepared 133 mistakes at work in communication because there are plenty of them. But this is what I did instead. I thought about what is the agenda for today. I thought about what do you need to know in this moment, based on also my experience as a coach, right, with people that I work. What do I see as something that's most common that is preventing people from progressing in their careers, getting to their goals? How is this relevant to where you might be, right? Also, what are the 3 things that I want you to walk away with, which we are going to also recap this training with? And then that's actually recap part, right? Either I might ask you to tell me how did you, what are the main takeaways for today, or I might do it. Cosme says, I also start getting bored or stop being focused. Yes, when there is too much going on, absolutely, because it's impossible for us to focus. It's impossible, especially in today's world with all these distractions. It's so hard to stay focused. The next one I want to point out here is not following up. So for example, I see this one very, very often happening in the job search. So if you're looking for a job, let's say you send an email or you send a connection request or you send a message to someone, they don't get back to you, then you assume, here we have assuming, right? You assume that they aren't interested or that they don't want to get back to you. And so you never follow up again with them. You never write to them again. You just move on. Okay, so again, if we want to connect this with assuming, let's not assume. But if you already want to assume, what about if instead of assuming they're not interested, you assume they might not have seen the message? Right? If we already need to assume, let's assume then something that's more useful to us, right? So why do we do that? Why don't we follow up? Because we think that we might be coming across as too annoying, or if we're in a team setting, that might come across as we're micromanaging our team. So for example, if you give someone to do something, right, you think that not like if you don't follow up with them, if you follow up with them, they will be considering you as if you're micromanaging them. And I'm going to tell you how we can go around that as we move into how to solve for that, right? Or you might be thinking that they'll remember what they need to do, or that they know what they need to do by whenever. And that is especially true when we set certain deadlines. And we think, yeah, person will surely get back to me by Friday at 1 p.m. For sure, they know. But what happens on the other side is maybe they just don't feel accountability for a certain thing. Maybe there is a delay from their side, but they don't know how to tell you that, or they're afraid to say it. Or maybe they are just not clear on their priorities. So by you not following up, they're going to keep working on something that might not be a priority. So again, how does that impact you? You might get frustrated, right? But not by not getting certain results that you have expected. You might miss your deadlines. You might just get no answer from them, right? So for example, if you said to someone to get back to you by Friday at 1 p.m., they don't get back to you and you're just sitting there and wondering what's happening, right? Then what might also happen is you just get distracted by thinking about that, so you don't continue with your work. What can also happen on the other side, damage reputation. Like for example, for my finance professionals, clients who work or being ghosted, yes, Sophia, clients who work in finance industry, for example, they oftentimes depend on other departments to provide them with certain data so that they can create their reports, so that they can present it to the board and so forth, right? And so if they don't receive the data by a certain time, they cannot do their work properly. And therefore, they might be risking to damage their reputation in front of other people and so forth. Okay. So what to do? How can we follow up from a nice point of view? Mirjana says, or being ignored. Yes, or being ignored. Absolutely. Cosmin says, in LinkedIn, for example, I saw a lot of people responding after my third message, just because they get a lot of messages and my message is down in the list. Yes, 100%. It happens to me as well that LinkedIn sometimes marks unread messages as read. So I never even saw a certain message. So if you don't follow up, I will definitely not see your message, right? Or very unlikely. So what to do? Set expectations and clear deadlines at the very beginning of your collaboration with your team, with your clients, with whoever you're working. Just really, really make sure that you're very clear and very set on what needs to be done, by when it needs to be done, who is doing what. Okay, so these are such important points to remember. Then agree with them. What is the best way to regularly check in? Sometimes, depending on the project, that might be once per day, like 5-minute catch up per day, or that might be once per week, or that might be once per month. Agree together. Okay, then follow up per email when and if necessary. So what I mean here, like follow up per email, is after that initial meeting, you can send an email being like, hi team, as agreed, boom, 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 and boom, right? Like the main points that you agreed with them. And also remember, of course, to respect their time and show appreciation for their work. Right? It's very, very likely that all of your colleagues are also having so much going on. They're working on so many things. So it's hopefully and probably not intentionally that they didn't get back to you as well. So Brian says, I don't have a stat handy, but if sales job searching, your chances of hitting the goal go up dramatically if you follow up. Yes, that's true. That's 100% true. Yes, absolutely. I also don't have stats either, but I can say from my personal experience of working in sales in the past, most of our business were coming from following up. Absolutely. Because following up is also your way to kind of reestablish the relationship and show that you are on top of things and you are interested in collaborating with them. Great, great points. All of you, thank you for sharing. I love this. That's why I love lives. All right. The next one to improve, not being specific enough with your requests or your expectations. Now, where I see that often, for example, is when I have my clients asking for or going after promotion or going after a raise, salary raise, right? Or for example, when you are a team leader and you have to set certain visions and certain goals for your team. So you're not being specific enough. And how do I know that someone isn't specific enough with their requests? Or how do I know that they have kind of struggle with that? Is they usually tell me, oh, I don't know how to say it. And if you don't know how to say it, that usually means because you aren't specific enough, right? Because you're confused. When we are confused, again, we cannot be effective. Now, why do we do that again? Because we might be afraid to come across as too demanding. So I often hear my clients or individuals in general telling me, oh, I don't want to ask for a raise. You know, I might come across as too greedy, or I might come across as too demanding. I don't want to be annoying to them. You might also not be clear about your intentions, what I just mentioned, right? You're not clear, why do you want to set a specific goal, or why do you want to ask for promotion, or how do you believe you are the one who deserves of it as well, right? And not knowing how to articulate your thoughts, which is again connected with not being specific, with starting with what actually do you want to do. So how does it impact others? Again, they're confused. They don't know what to work on. They're not sure about your expectations because you didn't clarify them. Now imagine, for example, if you're on the other side, if you have a boss who isn't specific with their goals, they're just like, yeah, just do something, whatever. You will be confused. You will not know, very likely, right, what to focus on. What are your priorities? What is your purpose there at all, right? You won't be effective. You will also feel like you have no guidance. And all that can very much result into just feeling demotivated. If we have a team leader, for example, who is being vague about their goals, you will also feel like, do they even care about this work? Right? And if they don't care about their work, oftentimes you are also kind of going to follow that as well. Cosmin says, how do you know when you're clear enough? Yeah, that's a great question. That's a very, very good question. How do you know you're clear enough? Well, I mean, it's very difficult for me to answer this question without having a bit more context. I would say maybe if we can put that one, Cosmin, if you can bring this question up at the end of the training where we have Q&A, like I will bring you up here and then we can actually, you can tell me maybe a bit more about the situation. That would be helpful, right? But usually, like, one thing that I use in terms of setting clear goals is the this SMART goal setting tool, which says about, yeah, exactly. Yeah, Sophia, you read my mind. SMART goals, exactly. Specific, is the goal specific enough? Do I know what that means? Like, am I clear what that means exactly? Is it measurable goal? Is it an achievable goal? Is it realistic? And is there a time bound on it, right? Is it a deadline? Right. So, for example, let's say if you are in sales. Now, today, for some reason, I'm talking a lot about sales, but let's use that example. If I'm your sales manager, Cosmin, and if I tell you, hi, Cosmin, let's say like this, you need to do more business development calls by Friday. That's not a specific goal, right? But if I tell you, hey, Cosmin, by Friday, 1 p.m., please make sure to log in at least 10 business development calls with clients who are within the pharma industry, for example. That is a more specific goal. Because from there on, you can be like, okay, now I know what I need to achieve. Now, how am I going to make sure to get to that goal? Or we might do it together. We might do planning together. You're very welcome. Awesome. So how does it impact you again when you aren't specific enough? Stressed, overwhelmed, frustrated, right? Because how don't they get it, right? We often are like that. How don't they get it? But then if we pause for a second and be like, wait, am I actually sure what I'm expecting of them? Am I clear on that first, right? So you might not be achieving your goals. There might be delays, right? And you're also risking not being seen as a leader. If we think about what leadership is, there are a lot of quotes on LinkedIn on that, right? But one of the main things is like, leader sets the vision. Leader leads with setting certain goals, right? So we need to get good in that. We need to get clear in that. Like, you can even practice that just on your own. Like, for example, if you're setting weekly goals or if you're setting monthly goals for yourself, how clear are those goals? Like, do you know exactly what you're working towards? Like, for example, an often one is, I want to eat healthier. What does that mean? What does it mean to eat healthier, right? You want to get specific about that. How specifically would eating healthier look like to you? Or I want to lose weight. Okay, what does that mean again? You want to get clear. You want to be able to measure. Brian says, my apologies, Sandra, but I have to drop. Great presentation. Oh, thank you, Brian. You will be watching a replay. I know. Thank you for joining us. I know some people have meetings. Again, it's Friday afternoon for me, for some evening, for some morning. So no problem at all. Okay, so what do we do about this? Get clear about your requests or your expectations first. What is your goal? Right? Like, what do you want to accomplish? And if you need help with this, like if you can think about a specific situation, again, feel free to bring it in Q&A at the end. I will help you do that. Or we can just do it in general. You can message me and we can do it together. Communicate clearly and specifically, like being very, very clear, not being vague with your people, right? You want to prevent any potential misunderstandings. You might also want to follow up per email when needed and if needed. I would actually suggest to do it, right? More than not to do it. Encourage questions. Ask others to recap. Like sometimes we ask, oh, do you understand? And they're like, yeah, I understand. But then you're like, do you really understand? And then they're like, no, I don't. Right? So we want to create a comfortable environment for people to ask questions, to feel free to ask them. Next one, not asking for feedback and not giving feedback. Does this resonate with you? This one can be a tricky one, right? So why we don't ask for feedback? We're sometimes afraid to be doing something wrong, right? Or we might actually be afraid to hear it. We might be scared to hear it. We might be like, I better not know this. I don't want to know this, right? We might be afraid to be taking it personally. We might be taking it as a criticism. And then what happens? Our ego is harmed, right? We all have that one. Usually, like I use that a lot. Like whenever I feel kind of hurt or whatever, I'm like, okay, that's my ego talking. Or, kind of angry. That's my ego talking. Let's see what's going on. Let's check it. Sophia says, if you don't feel emotional safety in the workplace, yes, that's a big one. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. And there that's such a huge one. People just don't feel comfortable to either ask or say it. Absolutely. Now, again, there are ways we can work on that, how we can maybe, create that emotional safety for ourselves. But maybe it's also sometimes we feel that, but we don't have maybe facts to back it up. So it could be that we are assuming certain things. So there are some things we could clarify a bit there as well. Sophia says, I have a boss who came into the job saying that they will lay the hammer down. How do you ask questions to someone like that? Yeah, that's again, an interesting one. I need to have a bit more context, of course, but I totally understand where you are coming from. And when somebody approaches from that point of view, it's not that you're like, oh, let me ask you 100 questions I have, right? Mirena says, I love to hear the feedback when it's honest and based on facts. Absolutely. Unfortunately, many times it's based on someone's assumptions. Absolutely. And we know where assumptions lead, right? Absolutely. And I'm gonna share with you how to ask for feedback, how to give feedback as well. Totally. So how does it impact the person you're talking with? It slows down their progress or it creates no progress. So this is more from the point of view, like if you are the one giving feedback or if you aren't giving feedback or if you aren't giving truthful feedback, what you're actually doing there, we are in a way harming them if you think about it. Because if I don't share with you what maybe your true performance is and how it's coming across, you will not have a chance to grow, to develop. Stefan says, and some people usually feedback only negative things, no praise. Yes, and this is definitely a point to improve. We never want to start feedback with a negative thing, because when you start the feedback with a negative, people don't hear the rest, right? We never want to do that. So again, if we don't give feedback or if we don't take, okay, this is actually another person first we are talking about, they might not take any accountability or responsibility as ownership. And again, no opportunity for them to upskill, right? I think one of the most beautiful things we can give to someone is truthful and constructive and honest and loving feedback, right? To help them grow. Cosme says, 90% of the time when I ask for feedback after a job interview, I don't get it. After digging up, it seems that people are afraid to give feedback because of lawsuits. How can we actually get a real feedback? Yes, that's a huge thing that's been going on. Absolutely. I mean, first thing to kind of keep in mind here is that kind of we need to get okay with that you won't be receiving feedback every single time. That's kind of how it is, right? But on a flip side, especially when you are applying for jobs, and especially when you were in, let's say, processes where you thought you were really an amazing fit for the role, I would call them. I would even call them and I would be like, listen, I understand you rejected my application. It's a pity to hear that, but I respect your decision. And I would really appreciate if you can just give me a quick feedback as to what was the reason for that, right? Again, especially if you think you're such a great fit. A lot of times people will be afraid to write it down. Yes, they will be. And they will rather give, just after careful consideration, we decided to not proceed with your application. That's kind of a standard response, isn't it? We just have a sip of water. Talking about not talking much, right? Right. How does it impact you? Again, not having feedback, not receiving it. It slows down your progress too. It makes you have lack of direction. It risks, or actually makes you miss out on developing different skills. So it's definitely a pity. Whenever you can get feedback, get it, right? Which is also, there is a caveat to all this. It's also important to keep in mind who is the person who is giving you this feedback, because not everyone who gives you their feedback or their opinion is something that you want to actually even entertain. Okay, so we also want to be mindful who is the person who is actually giving feedback. So what to do? First and foremost, reframe it. Feedback is beneficial. Feedback is beneficial if we decide to see it that way. Okay, feedback is beneficial because at the end of the day, feedback or words that you're getting as feedback are just words. You are attaching a meaning to them. You are attaching feelings to them, right? So no matter how bad it is, and I know it doesn't feel good, I know, right? But we can stay stuck in, oh no, the world is ending, being a bit dramatic here. Or we can be like, all right, I received this feedback. Now, how can I use this to my advantage? How can I make the best out of it? And I know it's not always easy, but we need to keep bringing our mind to what is more useful to us, okay? Then as you are reflecting, like as you're giving feedback, or as you are reflecting on your own performance, or when you are teaching someone on how to give feedback, I always suggest 3 simple questions you can start off with, which is firstly, what's working well? We always want to start with the positives. Okay, just because we are opening our mind to a different approach. Then what's not working that well? And then the third question is, what can you or your team do differently? 3 simple questions that do miracles. I learned this from my coach, and this is something that I use in really all sorts of different ways. I use it, for example, to reflect on my weeks. I end up my week by thinking, okay, what went well this week? What didn't go well this week? And what can I do differently next week? Right? So you want to think about how can you use these 3 simple questions. You can start if you have a team, if you're managing any people, you can start by that. So next time you start the feedback session with them, you can be like, so what's working? What are your perspectives? Remember, allowing them to speak first. What's working? Why do you think that? What's not working? Why do you think that? What do you think you can do differently? And then you can share your feedback with them as well. Mirjana, true, you have to respect the person that gives you the feedback and know that it's given to help you improve. Yes, because not everyone, sadly, will have the best intentions when sharing their feedback. So after we have these answers, after you know what's working, after you know what's not working, after you know what you can do differently, you want to create a plan. Now we want to do something with that feedback. We don't want to be just like, okay, great. Now, what do we want to do with that information? Create a plan. What I suggest is think about what is the first smallest step you can do right away. Simple. Not how I can climb the whole mountain, right? But what's the smallest first step I can take right away? And also think about, do you need any support? Ask for it. And also offer support to whoever you're giving feedback. Hey, what support might you need? How can I help you? Right? You don't maybe need to know, I mean, you might not know how to help them, but ask them, what help do you need? How can I best assist you? What would be most supportive for you right now? Okay. Number 7, paying attention only to what you say, but now to how you say it. This is a big one, right? There is, like, if you Google about communication, about verbal communication, body language, and so forth, it's words, like what we say is just 7%. 7% of the overall communication, right? Think about it. If I tell you, oh, that was a good work, or if I tell you, oh, that was a good work, right? The message is very different, isn't it? Or if I make some kind of a facial expression like, yeah, right, that was great, you will not think that was great, would you? Right? So we so much want to be mindful as to not only what we are saying it, but the way we are saying it. And also the same is true when somebody is talking to you, right? You want to pay attention to their overall being, not just the words that have been said. And that's why I also so much prefer like actually talking to people, either talking via video or via phone or in person rather than emailing, right? Because when I email you or when I message you, I'm reading that message in my tone of voice, right? So you might write good morning with exclamation mark and be like, oh, good morning. And I might be like, oh my God, why are they angry with me today? Right? So kind of one rule that I have is whenever I can call instead of write, I would prefer, because it also just deepens the relationship. It also prevents for different communication misunderstandings, really. So why do we do that? Because you might not be aware of the importance. Like, sometimes we're just not aware of it. I was also not aware that it's just 7% until I started doing research on body language and so forth. By the way, there's some amazing books on body language. If you're interested, let me know. I will send you the name. Cannot think about it. I cannot think of it right away, but I have it somewhere in the office. Or you might also just not be aware of how you come across in communication. You think that you come across in a certain way, but you're actually coming across in a totally different way, which can impact your people in a way that they might perceive you as too loud or too quiet or too aggressive or too, I don't know, excited or too whatever, right? And how that might impact you is you might be feeling disrespected. You might be thinking like, but I said it's in a great way. So what's wrong? Like, why is their, kind of answer not aligned with what I thought they would answer? Or you might feel misunderstood. Or you might not have, solid relationships with people because you might just not be aware. And that's totally okay. It's not that we are born with that awareness, usually. So what to do? Be mindful. Really start noticing how you speak, the speed, the volume, silence even, right? The body language, facial expressions. Like I would really suggest, it's so interesting just to kind of observe others, but also to think about your own, how you come across. There are cultural differences too. Absolutely. That's such a huge important thing to keep in mind as well. Right? In some cultures, certain things are rude, right? In certain cultures, those same things are either polite or just okay, right? So we want to be mindful as to who is the other person that we are talking to as well, right? And how can we always be respectful, right? So how do you think you come across? I like to do this exercise with my clients. How do you think you come across? And then the next question, how do you want to come across? Right? You might want to practice in front of the mirror or record yourself. And listen, I've done it all. I know it's awkward and it sounds like, what? Recording myself or practicing in front of the mirror? It sounds silly, yes, but it's actually super effective. And it really makes you understand certain things that you weren't even aware. You're like, what? Right? And ask for feedback. Again, people that you trust, people that you know will really give you from a loving point of view their truthful feedback. Next one, giving an answer before challenging further. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're in a team and you have those colleagues who continuously come to you with asking you questions. Hey, what should I do? And you're just like, this is what you should do, right? So they're continuously coming to you. So why do we keep giving those answers? Because we don't want to risk not be seen as nice, right? Because we think by giving all these answers, we are being super helpful. Or you might just not be patient enough. You're like, oh, yeah, let me just give this answer and let's move on. But here is what happens. Here is the impact. And now, again, with the caveat here as well, sometimes we just need to give the answer because we know that the other person just doesn't know it, or we just really don't have time to not give them an answer, okay? But if we keep giving answers to people around us, this is what happens. They become dependent on you. They continuously go back to you for answers. They're not upskilling, and they're most probably also not taking responsibility, right? So every time you answer someone's question, what happens is that you are problem solving, you are upskilling, and they are becoming usually more dependent on that, more dependent on your answers. Does this resonate? Does this sound familiar? Because I know this is one of the things that a lot of my clients struggle with in terms of, kind of, they don't want to come across as, I don't know, rude or not nice or whatever, right? But they don't kind of think about it actually, right? Like they are becoming more dependent on you. Did you experience that in your office? Feel free to put it in the chat. Sophia says, yes, people want someone else to do their thinking for them. Yes, because it's easier, right? And our minds, our brains always, I mean, not always, let's not generalize, but most often than not look for shortcuts, right? But then you burn out. Yes, exactly. And this is exactly what I'm about to say now, right? You become overwhelmed, not only with all your tasks and responsibilities, but all the questions and answers and everything that you need to be doing for others too, right? You're distracted by all different requests. So you start doing something, then somebody's like, hey, da 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 da, and then you're like, yes, da 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 da, right? And then okay, now I need to get back to what I was doing actually, right? So there's just so much going on. You're not able to distance yourself from work. That's another one. Have you ever been in a situation where you go on holidays, but you're not really on holidays? You're checking your emails? Mirena says, very familiar. I've learned not to offer too much help anymore. I like to point them to the resources to find the answers for themselves. Yes, that is so good. Cosmin, this was the first thing I learned as a leader. I need to help people find their answers, not me giving them the answer. Yes, 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 yes. To all of you. Sophia, I haven't been on holiday for years, but I'm open to it. Yeah, I bet. So let's change that, Sophia. So what to do? Answer with the question. So for example, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, Sandra, what do you think I should do about blah, blah? I will say, what do you think you should do with blah, blah? I'm not being rude. I'm not being not nice, right? Remember again the tone. What do you think? Tell me. Let's brainstorm it together. Or you might be setting clear expectation and goals. What I mean there is you might be, for example, thinking like, in a team meeting, you might say something like, listen, this is what we're going to do. If you have any questions, of course, you can come to me. Of course, we're going to solve for that. Of course, I'm here to support you. But before you come up with a question, how about you either collect a few questions and then you come to me with a few questions rather than one by one, or you think about the solution and then you ask me a question, present the solution, and then we brainstorm it together. Imagine how much more useful that is for everyone involved, right? Josie, this is me helping too much and not allowing others to figure it out. Yes, just think about it. Just like just a simple shift. If you just shift from, I'm not actually helping them in that way, right? Then you're like, oh, what's actually more helpful, especially when we think long-term, is you helping them come up with an answer. So it's not that you're going to be like, don't talk to me, I don't have time. No, just be like, what do you think? Let's think about it together. Okay. Sophia says, and have to get past, if you want it done right, you have to do it yourself mindset. That's such a big one. Yes, 100%, Sophia. That's such, I think we're all very, very much into that. The last one before the extra one, avoiding difficult conversations. Here we go. How many of you avoids them? How many of you are like, no, I would rather not talk about that? Yes. Josie, yes. Why do we do that? Because we don't want to destroy a relationship. Because we think that conflict is super negative. It's a horrible thing. We need to avoid it by all costs, right? We sometimes also think that avoiding it will make things better. We might also avoid it because we just don't know how to address it. Sophia says, I'm actually too much of the opposite, and that is why I'm alone. Oh, I'm sure that's not the case, Sophia. Amazing people around you as well. So now, how does this impact people around you? They're confused. Imagine you had a misunderstanding with someone and now you're pretending everything is fine. And they're like, wait, what's happening here? Right? They might be distracted because they're thinking about you and that misunderstanding you might have had. That reduces, obviously, their productivity. That might lead to no trust and also no respect, but also no growth. What's like overall. Miriam, it depends again on the person you're talking to. 1 second. Talking to. If it's constructive feedback, then I'm all for it. Yes, it very much, of course, absolutely depends on who. Yeah. Cosmin, I like conflicts. Based on conflicts, we can brainstorm and evolve. Yes. If a conflict appears, then both people care about the thing. Yes. So good. They care about the thing. I love it. That's such a good one. Right. So if we avoid, just before we move to solving, if we avoid, what happens is we start spinning in our thoughts and feelings. We are thinking, oh no, what if this, what if that, what they might be thinking, right? We're not growing again. We're not allowing ourselves space to grow because every difficult conversation, every difficult situation in general is an opportunity to grow, right? We are missing out on creating even stronger relationships. There is a potential for you to create a stronger relationship and potentially damage reputation as well. Now, what do we do? So if you are about to have a difficult conversation, one of the things that you can do that I would definitely suggest is firstly, what do you want to, like, what is your goal of having that conversation with this person? What is your intention? What do you want to walk away with from having that conversation, right? And I would also think about, like, there are some instances, rarely though, but there are some where you would, even though I cannot really now even think about what specific, I cannot think about a concrete situation where you would avoid it. But there probably are some in certain situations. But more often than not is I would ask myself, like, what if I cannot avoid this? What if the only way to solve this is by talking to this person, right? And then I would start by thinking, okay, so what do I want to walk away with? And another thing that I would keep in mind is always you and your colleagues are on the same team. You're all working towards the same goal, right? So how is you solving that problem actually so much more beneficial for you, for them, for the team, and for the business? Now, having a difficult conversation or solving a conflict doesn't mean you have to become best friends either, right? So we also want to be aware of that. So this is not either or. It's just about coming from a professional and respectful point of view. Sophia says many times it's just a lack of clarity. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And many times it's also assuming different things. I assume that they don't want to talk to me. They assume that I don't want to talk to them. And here we go. Problem again. We're assuming. All right. So these were the 9. Now, are you ready for what's going on? Talking too much. Let me have a sip of water. Are you all ready for the 10th one? Yes? Okay. The way you talk to yourself. The way you talk to yourself, right? Like we often forget that self-talk and self-communication is the most important that we will ever have, right? Like it's what we are saying to ourselves. These are the stories we say to ourselves. So for the homework, before I go, I just want to read Miriana's comment. It says, I always like to see the conflict as the opportunity to see other people's point of view of you. Okay, of you, yeah, and exchange ideas trying to find a solution. Yes. And when we approach it from that point of view, it's so much more useful, right? Okay, so when we think about the way you talk to yourself, I want to give you some homework for you to think about. And I also encourage you to share your thoughts with me if you'd like to share your answers with me, or at least some, main takeaways from answering those questions. So the first question that I have for you here is, what stories do you keep telling yourself? What stories do you keep telling to yourself about you as a professional, about your abilities, about your capacities, right? About your overall career? What are those stories that you keep saying to yourself, right? So, for example, how you never do certain things, or how you always do that, or how you're not good enough in a certain area, or how you will never be able to, right? I was coaching a client earlier today, and he had just joined an amazing company on a leader position. And we were talking about 1 year from now. And he was like, oh, I will, yeah, 1 year from now, I will not be at the higher level. And I'm like, no, what are we talking here? Right? It's not about, yes, you will surely be, or no, you will surely not be, but just how is that useful to you? Which is the next question I want you to ask yourself. How useful are those stories that you're saying to yourself? Are they useful to you? If you keep saying to yourself, oh, I'm not able to do X, Y, Z, how is that useful to you? How does that feel in your body? This is really like deep thinking. And I know it sometimes can be like, it takes a bit of time to sit and think about these things, but I promise you that the main important things that holds you back, holds all of us back from achieving whatever we're after, is because of the way we feel about it, the way we talk to ourselves about it, right? If I approach a matter being like, oh, I will definitely not be able to do that, what do you think, how much effort will I put in it? Now, the opposite of that doesn't need to be, oh, I will surely do that. Yes, 100%. But it can be, let me try. Let me take the first step, right? And the last question I want you to ask yourself is, what could be more useful? What could be more useful stories for you to say to yourself as you move on, right? So what I always suggest is to focus on what you do know, what you can do, what you are able to, and then build on top of that, while at the same time, of course, continuing to learn and upskill and so forth and so forth. Right. This is like to give you a specific example. This we often see when we are in a new situation. Let's say you've started the new position and you're like, oh my God, I will never be able to do this. This feels so heavy and I have no idea what's going on. And I feel so, confused and whatever. But we forget about all the stuff that you are bringing with you, all the stuff that you do know already, and all the stuff that you can do and are able to, right? We kind of stay stuck in focusing on everything that's not working, that we forget about, hey, but what are all amazing things that are working, right? Sophia says, a relationship with disappointment is something I'm addressing on my own journey. Yeah, that's a big one, disappointment. Yeah, that's so much to uncover there, to work on, and how, what makes us feel this way. And so, yes. But it's going to be so freeing as well. And to understand, what does that exactly mean, right? What does this tell us? What stories are causing you to feel these ways? Stefan says, would you talk to others the way you talk to yourself? Rarely. 100%. Yes. That's a very good point. Actually, one of the things, like if it's hard for you to imagine, what could be more useful stories, if it's hard for you to answer that question, just ask yourself, what would I say to my friend? Miren, I'm just the opposite. It has to do with your level of knowledge and confidence. My reasoning, I know myself the best, and I'm confident that I'm able to complete something. I'll be all invested. It's something, oh my God. It's sometimes viewed by others as pretending to know it all. Yeah, it's sometimes maybe viewed by others. But I would get curious, is it really, like, did they give you that feedback, or are you assuming, or are you thinking that they might be seeing it that way, right? And if yes, I would even get curious what specifically maybe makes them think that way, right? But also very, very important, like, how does that again feel in your own body? Okay. So now, what do we do with all of this knowledge? I would like you to, again, another homework that I want to give you here, like how can we now recap all this? Because we want to make sure we are not overwhelmed with all this information. And if you want to share in the chat right now, feel free to. What points resonated with you the most? So that is one of the questions I would start by asking myself. And then the next point would be, so which ones do you want to focus on right away? So from those that resonated with you, which ones do you want to focus on right away, that you want to start working on right away? And how do you want to do that? Like, what is your plan of action? Remember what I said before, what is the first smallest step you can take right away? Okay, so to kind of recap all this content, again, you will be receiving the slides. So even if you maybe didn't take all the notes, or you maybe missed on something, you will be able to go through the slides and go through the replay in your time as well. So this was our training for today. This is the content I prepared. I hope it was helpful. I want to just point out, as I said, Stefan says, I like the first smallest step concept. Yes, because it just feels so much more doable, right? Than like, oh, let me become amazing in all of them. And listen, I think that communication is also one of those skills that we are continuously improving, right? Like more we talk to people, more we communicate, more we put ourselves out there, more natural it also becomes, more we are starting to become aware of certain things that we could be improving and how to do them and so on. All right. So this is also one of the main skills. I wouldn't say main skills, but actually, yeah, main skills I work on also in my coaching with my clients. We work a lot on communication. So this is what I also wanted to actually point out to you in terms of working with me. I told you I will tell you a bit about that. So if you're interested in working with me, I invite you to book a free consult call with me. I think you should have received a link to booking a consult call in your email at some point during this presentation. The point is really for us to see where you are in your career and how could potentially coaching help you, right? So this is not a call now, let's work together. It's just for us to explore if coaching could help you, especially if a lot of things resonated with you in today's training as well. So this is what we do typically during a consult call. We audit your current career situation, right? So we go through different aspects of your career. We look into where you are and where you wish to be and by when in your career. We identify potential roadblocks and challenges that might be preventing you from getting there on your own at the moment. We get clear on the process of how to get there, and we then decide if and how would working together with me look like, right? But even if we decide to work together, or even if we decide not to work together, either way, you are going to leave this call having clarity on what are the things that you can improve and how you could potentially do that. So there were some comments. And by the way, if you have any questions about my consult call, you can also please put them in the chat, or I will actually open now for Q&A. Sophia says, self-talk, how does this negative feedback serve me? What is something that gets me to my goal? I do like the smallest step concept as well. It gets the ball rolling. Starting is the hardest part many times, 100%. Yes, absolutely, Sophia. That's so good. Stefan says, some people are usually good communicators, but it's important to know for the rest of us that it can be learned. Yes, absolutely. It's a skill, right? It's a skill. And as a skill, every skill can be learned, right? It's just, again, so very important just to find a way that really feels the most aligned to you. It shouldn't feel like something forced. It shouldn't feel like something that goes against your values. We always need to check in with ourselves. That's so, so very important. All right, are you ready to hear about the awards? For all of you who have been here, let me actually write down everyone who is still here. So we have Cosmin, we have Gina, Jennifer, just to make sure, because I will tell you what I'm gonna do. We have Josie, we have Mirjana. I know I'm not super techy, so that's why I'm like writing down literally with on a pen and a paper. We have Sophia, and we have Stefan. Oh, thank you. 1 second. Stefan. Thank you, Cosmin. Being this presentation is already an award. Oh, Jennifer, excellent session. Thank you. Thank you for being here. All right. So the award, just to make sure that I didn't forget anyone, I have Cosmin, Gina, Jennifer, Josie, Mirjana, Sophia, and Stefan, right? Please, if I forgot something, just please let me know. You're so kind, all of you. So the award is a free coaching call with me. This is going to be an award for someone of you. Mirjana says, beautiful session, Sandra. As someone said, we're already awarded. Brian had to drop off. Yeah, Brian, you're right as well, Brian. Okay, thank you all for a beautiful feedback. Thank you very, very much. So one of you is going to win a coaching call with me. So what I'm going to do, each of you has equal chances. So I'm going to write your names on the pieces of paper, and I'm going to literally draw one of you who will be invited to have a free coaching call with me, which means that you can bring any career topic with you in a call, and we're going to work on it together, okay? For the rest of you, again, even if you don't win this award at the moment, I would still invite you, if you are curious to do an audit of your career, if you are curious to explore what's happening, book a consult call with me. We're going to talk about that. It's not going to be a coaching call, but it's going to be more a consulting call, right? So either way, you are going to also leave with a lot of value. Okay, sounds good? All right, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to, let me, 1 second, stop focus mode. Yeah, I want to open up. We have around 15 minutes now. If you want to turn on your cameras, please feel free to do that, because now I can see all of you. I just see your names though. But if you feel comfortable to turn on your cameras, please go ahead. Otherwise, what questions might you have? Is there anyone who has any questions, any comments? If you want to share what your takeaways were from today, what are some things you want to start working on right away, please let me know. Anyone? Or if you have questions about the consult call, that also is something you can ask. Was everything that clear? Are you all ready?
We have like that guy that I told you he's our new manager who came in to lay the hammer down and get us in line. But like when you know that someone is literally, this is what I'm working with. Like I was just standing around and I happened to have my hands on my hips because it was just kind of like comfortable. And he told me that he felt intimidated, and I laughed a little bit. I was like, "You're kidding, right?" And he's like, "No, that was intimidating the way you were standing." I'm like, "That's what you're working with." Like, how? I mean, he's already had a lot of people quit. Like right before Valentine's Day, the whole floral department quit. So it's like when you have somebody who's kind of like openly hostile like that. Yeah. Do you have points of view on that one?
Yeah. I mean, obviously the sign that so many quit, the fact that so many people quit, that's a sign of probably a manager that's not the nicest, obviously, to work on, right? So that's also something we want to keep in mind. But one of the things, like what I would do in that situation, I would probably be like, what do you mean intimidating? Tell me more.
That's what I said too. It was like, I'm not going to hurt you. I said that. I'm like, I was like baffled, but I literally, like, I'm not here to. Yeah.
You know, one kind of rule that I have, I think will be helpful for all of you, is that like whenever I'm not sure what to say, I ask for more clarification. That's literally the rule I have for myself. Like if I don't know what to answer, either I will openly say, but because sometimes I really am speechless, which is very rarely though. But it happens, right? Then I'm really like, I have no idea what to say. And I even say that. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you now. I really don't know, right? Or I would say, but wait, tell me more about that. What do you mean exactly? You can literally just ask, tell me more, or what do you mean? These two questions are really, really powerful, and they open up for more conversation, right? And then if, sorry, just quickly. And if he, for example, in this instance would have said, well, I don't know, you're just being intimidated, I would be like, but sorry, how can you say I'm intimidated without, you know, giving more clarification behind that?
Yeah. It's down to curiosity.
Yeah, yes.
To open your mind, and it also helps a lot if you feel yourself triggered. Yes. So instead of riding the emotional wave, you can just say, I'm sorry, I'm confused here. What do you mean? Yes. And then you know more. Yes. And you may get triggered for the right reason, but at least you know, that's for sure, you don't assume.
Yes, absolutely. I would just be cautious, like what you said, Stefan, that's so good, like bringing up the emotions, because that's such an important thing. Like when we are triggered, especially when we are very triggered emotionally, sometimes the best way is just to physically distance yourself from the situation, right? Just to kind of be like, okay, I'll be right back. Go do something. just distance yourself physically and then come back to it. That's also very good tip, so to say, to keep in mind.
Thanks.
Thank you for bringing it up. Anyone else? You want to share what your main takeaways are, maybe? Or what's the first smallest step you will start working on?
I would say my one, being an engineer, my brain is wired to solve problems.
Yes.
So I have to now force myself to say, wait a minute, does they want me to solve a problem? Do they need just to be listened to? So that's a hard one.
Yes, that's such a great one.
But as I said in the chat, it's down to awareness. Now I know about it. It doesn't mean I'm good at it all the time, but at least I know that's one of my flaws.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's, it's such a, I think one thing to kind of, calm ourselves down, and, I don't know if calm is the right word, but kind of that helps, let's put it this way, is that we also don't need to be good in everything all the times. That's also something to remember, right? Because that's an unrealistic expectations to put on ourselves. Like, it's impossible. How can we be always great and amazing and now we know all of them, and now I will never make any of these mistakes. Of course we will. All of us will. All of us, right? But just becoming aware of that, more we are aware, more we're like, One thing that I, for example, give to my corporate client where I'm training their salespeople is I always tell them after every sales call, or at least after every day, reflect on what went well, what didn't go that well, what you can do differently. And in sales, I mean, obviously we're talking about communication there, right? We're purely on that. So you can do the same. For example, if you had a meeting and after the meeting, you can be like, okay, let me just quickly check in with myself. What worked? What didn't work? What can I do better? Always from a loving and kind point of view. Remember that, always.
I don't want to take it too much, but there is one more question. Like, when you're more of a, I don't want to put genders on it, but there's certain people that come from more feelings and emotions when they're talking about anything, and then come from logic and that. And so when an emotion person is talking to a logic person, or a logic person is talking to an emotion person, I feel like a lot of times things get lost, because like, but I feel this, and he's like, that has nothing to do with anything. It's about logic. And then I think in both personal and professional situations, there's something that gets lost in translation, because the emotional person may like disregard the logic, and the logic person may disregard the emotion because they put different value on it. But to the other person, the other thing is the thing. I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I got you. I totally understand what you mean. Like, of course. I didn't hear I don't know if it was only me, but I couldn't hear the last sentence you said. Would you repeat, please?
Conflate between logic people and emotion people.
Yeah. That definitely can be a challenge, 100%. And I mean, of course, it depends on the situation, right? It depends on the context. But generally speaking, the way I would approach that is I would kind of be very transparent about it. I would be like, listen, I know you are more of a logic or emotional person, and I'm more of this kind of a person. So I just want to pause here for a second so we don't have any misunderstandings. This is how I see things. How do you see things? I really want us to be on the same page, right? So I would really call out on these things, especially if they're so obvious. I think this is, in most of the situations, the best approach. Just to being honest, being like, listen, I know you see things a bit differently than I do, which is totally okay, right? There is no right or wrong. It's just that what would be the best way for us to put ourselves on the same page so that we can be more effective moving on? Because that creates also, at least in my opinion, right? Like, and from my experience, it makes the other person feel more comfortable with you. It makes them trust you more, right? When you're being kind of vulnerable in a way, I don't know if that's really vulnerable, but you're being honest about what's happening. You're welcome. Anyone else?
Yeah, I really love your style, Sandra. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
I just find out that I've been through many trainings before, like in my previous roles. Once I started working in this present corporation, like for the last 13 years, I found myself in the position that I think I was moving backwards, not really forward, because like I understood that many people are used to like certain ways of doing things. And like there is always difference between, like as someone said, manager and a leader. So I was groomed to be a leader in the previous positions in a previous company. Here I was put in the position just to pretty much listen to what experienced managers are saying. So now it's that thing, like, you're trying to improve, you're trying to put some ideas out, and then there is always that resistance, and then finally you don't really have time to deal with that anymore. You want to just move forward, And what I do, I just pretty much isolate myself from certain types of people and just like concentrate on doing my own stuff, learning. But it's hard, you know, like you want to be like open and you want to be able to put, you know, your ideas out. But like many times you don't really have a support. Yeah.
Okay. So here are 3 ideas I have for you here. This is a bit of a coaching here as well.
Yeah.
Kind of mixed.
Sure.
Firstly, I would get curious, and you don't have to answer this right now, but just something for you to think about. I would get curious about how is you isolating yourself truly useful to you? Okay, so I would get curious about how is it useful? And then 2 more ideas that I would think about is like about the circumstance you're in. Like when we are in a certain circumstance and when we maybe don't like a certain circumstance, if we don't want to change the circumstance, like if that's not an option, what's going to be more useful is going to be to change your thinking about the circumstance, right? So what you can think about would be, how can I get okay with them being that way? How can I just be okay with that? If you can, right? Some people can, some people cannot. So you have to see like, what is your decision there? But if you don't want to, like, if you want to still try and change the circumstance, I would focus on what is within my control. So for example, it can be, how can I communicate my message in an even more effective way so that the management understands why it's in their interest to change certain things, for example, right? Or what results can you create to make them aware? How can you, put their attention to certain things that you believe could be changed? Or how can you maybe be more direct? Maybe you're not more direct enough with them, right? Maybe they're not clear on what your expectations are. So I would answer these 3 questions really for myself. I would start there and then see which one maybe of these 3 resonates with you the most. Because maybe, you're okay with circumstances be like this and you're okay to just continue working that way.
Yeah, I understand. Like, I'm not really okay doing this way, but I'm not in the position or I don't really want to change the ways because this is someone else's job.
Okay.
I'm just putting myself out. We're trying to help as much as I can, as I'm asked to. Like, I can see the things are not progressing my way. So I am pretty much like, trying to like attend as many sessions, like work sessions, and learn as much as I need for my next steps. And that's where I find myself. Like, we offered some leadership programs now, and some that would, they would put my name somewhere, like more out, and I mean, it's gonna help me with more recognition from other, like, people who may have more influence.
Yeah. Okay. Just
that's my point.
Yeah. And I add a little bit from my experience in my workplace is like 2 things. Is one is like sometimes you have to allow them to fail, and a lot of people want to jump in there and fix it. And I tried that, like you try to jump in, like this is going to happen. Like I told them, like if you continue to act in this way, you're going to lose important staff, and they did, And then after they did, then they were more open to listen at that time.
Yeah.
Than they were before it happened. They were kind of in a delusional state about like that they could keep doing this and it was going to be okay. And it's hard for us because we see it happen. Like a lot of times, I think people like you are like, you see it, like you see what's going to happen. But sometimes you have to allow the system to fail. And then they're at that time more open to listen. And I think that's like the hardest thing. Just take a step back and allow them to do what they want to do and then maybe it works. But if it doesn't, then they'll be more open to listen. And then at that time, you can offer your leadership and your information, and they may be more likely to actually receive it because they're in receiving mode at that time, where they may not be at first. They're like, everything's great, and sometimes it's delusional and sometimes it's real, but that's how we work it out. That would be my take on that.
Great insights here. Yeah, definitely. But again, right, like as Sophia said, and you, Mirjana, as well, right? Like it's really about checking in. If we cannot change the circumstance, how can we get to feeling okay with it? and at the same time, just as you're doing, continue working on other things, right? Continuing finding that joy and pleasure in other things. Again, really, it's a very individual thing, right? Like some people can be okay with that, some people will not be okay with, like, it really depends on so many, the whole context of the situation as well, right? It's never just one thing. It's never just only, yeah. We have 2 more minutes. Anyone else? Is there anyone else who has anything to share?
All right, I'll have a quick question, Sandra.
Go.
So I'm in a role where it's little like a policing. I have to take care of delivery excellence for the team. I set up processes and ensure that everything's being implemented the right way. And if it's not happening, I raise questions with the team.
Okay.
And sometimes that could be taken in a different way by the team. They could get defensive about it. Or, I try my best to be able to be assertive, but not aggressive, but at the same time, not coming across as rude. So this is a little tricky, but that's the role that I have. But trying to get the team on board, having them on the same page, that this is the goal we are all working towards, is quite a difficult challenge. So, is there something I can do with regards to communications that I can get on the same page with the team? I have tried to speak, but I don't know, every time, if it's just a simple question as why hasn't this task been completed? The due date was so and so. It's a straightforward question, but sometimes it can be taken as a personal attack as to, pinpointing at people.
Yeah. So for example, just as you mentioned that specific question, I have more thoughts, but just this specific question, we want to be mindful as to when we use why as a start of the question, just because why can sometimes sound as we are judgmental. Like why this hasn't been done. How can you rephrase, right? How can you can ask, hey, where are we at with this task? Or what's the status on this task? How does that sound?
Yeah, this is just a question I put out right now. But yeah, I've used statements like more of without being making assumptions here. Like, is there a roadblock? Trying to understand their point of view. Is there a roadblock because of which you couldn't work on this or you couldn't complete this project? So I have tried different combinations, permutations with the way I send out an email or the way I ask it. But yeah, there has been a little resistance from people, and I sense that they look at me as policing.
Okay.
But that is the job. Okay.
How many are in the team? How many people do you have?
There are 10.
10. Okay. All right. So it's not too big of it. Okay. So here's what I would offer. I would get curious, like with myself, what do I think? Why they're being resistant? Okay. Like, what do I think about my approach? Always we want to bring it to us, right? Like, what do I think about my approach makes them feel or behave resistant? I don't know if that's right in English, but right? Or what makes them feel defensive? Like, what do you think? Why are they giving you that feedback? Okay, I would reflect on that. And this is, again, not to judge yourself and be like, oh my God, I'm a horrible manager, because you're not, right? But just to understand what's happening there. I would also get curious before you go in there to ask what's working with my team. So first question would be, what's working well when it comes to managing my team? And then the next would be, where is this resistance? Where is this defensiveness coming from? What do you think? Okay, so maybe you can think about, what about my tone? What about the, my email? Read those emails that cause so much drama, and ask yourself, if I were my employee, what would I thought about this email, right? So do a bit of reflection there. I'm sure something will come up as you do that, okay? Another thing that I would suggest is to maybe have either one-on-ones or small group meetings with them and ask them for their suggestions, ask them for their feedback. Hey, I've noticed a bit of resistance. What do you think? Right? Or I feel like I might be coming across in a certain way. I really want us to be on the same page. So tell me, is there any other way I should be approaching you that you would find more, better? So this is another thing that you can consider doing. But I would also put a caveat to all of this, and that is some people will just have always something to say and always something to think about your approach, and that is also okay. Right? Because we also have to remember that, of course, as a leader, we want to make sure that our team is happy, that everything is amazing and great. But we also have to remember that not everyone will always be happy and will be fine with our approach. I heard once one quote, like, if you want to make everyone happy, go and sell ice cream. Right? So kind of, I bet there are people who don't like ice cream either. Right? So anyway, just to always keep in mind.
The lactose intolerant, you'll have to have lactose intolerant ice cream.
Here we go. Here we go. Cosmin says, I would try. How can we do this task faster next time? Yeah, great question. And always face to face or audio, never in an email or just in writing, and even continue the discussion. I had some pressure from upper management about that, and I would like to help next time if I can to speed it up. Yes, if I can help to speed it up. Great. Right. Offer support. Being like, listen, how can I help you, or how can team help you to, you know, to make sure that we are meeting these deadlines, and to help and to kind of make them aware, because they really want you to be able to, you know, feel fine and less stressed, right?
Right. Yep.
But I would definitely, Jennifer, start by what's working with your team and management, and then where's it coming from, and then maybe scheduling one-on-ones.
Yeah.
Is like one that you're already the energy of policing, which you don't want to be policed. No one wants to be policed. So you're coming from a police energy and expecting a warm response, and you're not going to get that. I mean, that's not a judgmental. I'm just kind of like, you're using the word police. You know what I mean? Maybe just like, I am your supporter. I am your sponsor with the management, because I believe, like, from what you're saying, your team understands that how you're serving management, but they may not have a complete understanding of how you're serving them. Therefore, they see you in a more adversarial tone than if you were like, I am the liaison. Because like when I talk to my team, I'm like, I'm Switzerland, you know? That's what I just said. I'm Switzerland. I'm not yours. I'm not theirs. I'm Switzerland, and I'm here to get the results done. If you get the results done, I'll be off your butt. If you're not getting the results done, I will be on your butt. That's how you're going to know if I'm on your butt or not. Are the results done? Yes. Do what you want. Go talk to your friends. Take 5 extra minutes in the break room. I don't care. But if the results are not done, here I am. What are we going to do about it? You know, so, and they know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I mean, it's just what I'm not trying to, if I sound like judgmental, I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying, from what you said to me, it seems to me like your team's like, well, we know that Jennifer's working for them, you know, because obviously your workspace, if it's having this issue, it's an us or them type of situation, because otherwise it would be flowing, you know. So I would say, see where, like, no, this is how I serve you guys too, you know. And if we do this, then we can do that, you know, and kind of get into that thing. And then you're not the police. You're like, I'm your liaison. What do you need to make them understand what it's done? Might be a more better tone to come from. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's my take on it.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. We went a bit over time. Hope that's not a problem. Thank you all for being here with me. I wish you an amazing rest of the day and the weekend. I will be sending you the replay probably tomorrow, either today or tomorrow. So you can go through it again. You will be receiving slides again. And also the person who won the coaching call will hear from me as well, probably by the end of the day tomorrow. So again, thank you. Thank you, Gina. Thank you all. I hope this was helpful. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you, Sandra. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thanks,
Very
everyone.
helpful. Thank you.
Bye.
Very helpful. Bye-bye.